You open your banking app near the end of the month. Not because you overspent, not because something went wrong. You open it because you should be fine. Your income is decent, your lifestyle is controlled, nothing looks irresponsible, and still your savings barely moved. Again. If this moment feels familiar, listen carefully, because this isn't about discipline, and it's not about motivation. You're doing the things financially responsible adults are told to do. You earn, you plan, you avoid obvious mistakes, yet the result never feels stable. You don't feel ahead, you don't feel relaxed, you just feel tight. That quiet pressure you feel, the sense that money slips away without drama or warning, that is not a personal failure. That feeling is the signal. And once you understand it, you can't unsee it. On paper, your income says you should be comfortable, stable even. You earn enough to cover your life. You're not struggling in obvious ways. And from the outside, everything looks fine. But inside, it doesn't feel fine. You don't feel relaxed about money. You don't feel ahead. You feel alert, like one unexpected expense could shift everything. Not destroy you, just destabilize you. That's the strange part. You're not afraid of collapse. You're afraid of friction. A medical bill, a car issue, a slow month. Each one feels heavier than it logically should. So you start questioning yourself. You replay decisions. You wonder if you missed something obvious. But here's the important part. When people with decent incomes feel this same pressure again and again, the problem isn't personal behavior. It's the structure surrounding how money now works. Here's what most people never consciously notice. The way you spend money today is completely different from how spending worked even 20 years ago. Back then, expenses were visible. They showed up in large, unavoidable moments. Rent was obvious. Utilities were obvious. Groceries were obvious. You felt the cost immediately. Today, spending doesn't arrive loudly. It slips in quietly. Money leaves your account in small, repeated amounts, often automatically, often without a clear decision. Subscriptions you signed up for once, service fees added at checkout, convenience charges layered into normal life. None of these feel painful on their own. That's the point. Modern spending systems are designed to remove friction from saying yes and remove awareness from paying. So spending no longer feels like an event. It feels like background noise. And background noise is easy to ignore until you realize how much it's costing you. Now, let's make this concrete. Picture a dual-income household. 2 adults, decent salaries, no reckless habits. They don't splurge. They don't live extravagantly. They consider themselves careful with money. They have a few subscriptions they barely think about. Food delivery on busy days, convenience fees they accept without questioning, small impulse purchases during stress or fatigue. Nothing feels excessive. Nothing feels irresponsible. But here's where the math changes everything. Just $8 a day, less than a coffee and a small fee, adds up to nearly $3,000 in a year. Not spent in one moment, not felt emotionally, not remembered clearly. It doesn't feel like spending. It feels like life. But that's the danger. When money leaves invisibly, it never gets the chance to become savings, security, or future flexibility. This isn't a willpower problem, and it's not a discipline issue. It's how your brain is wired to work. Your brain evolved to react to big, obvious threats, sudden losses, clear danger. A large rent payment gets attention immediately. A major bill creates an emotional response. But small, repeated costs don't trigger the same alarm. A $10 charge feels harmless. A subscription renewal barely registers. A convenience fee fades into the background. The more frequent the cost and the smaller the amount, the quieter your emotional response becomes. So nothing feels urgent. Nothing feels wrong. You respond logically to each individual decision, but your brain never pauses to evaluate the pattern. And financial damage doesn't come from one bad decision. It comes from patterns you never felt strongly enough to question. That's why these costs are so effective. Hitting costs don't just reduce your bank balance. They quietly shape how you live. Because when money feels tight without a clear reason, you start adjusting your behavior. You delay saving more aggressively. You hesitate before investing. Long-term plans feel heavier than they should. Not impossible, just uncomfortable. You don't feel poor, but you also don't feel safe. There's a constant low-level awareness running in the background, a sense that you need to be careful, that one misstep could create stress. So you play it safe. You postpone decisions, you avoid risk, even when risk might help you grow. This pressure doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up as mental fatigue. And over time, that quiet financial tension becomes exhausting, not because of one big problem, but because it never fully goes away. Here's the shift that changes how you see all of this. Stop asking, is this expense cheap or expensive? That question misses the point. Instead, ask, does this expense deserve a permanent place in my life? Because hitting costs aren't dangerous because they're large, they're dangerous because they repeat. They auto-renew. They normalize. They quietly compound over time. When spending becomes permanent, it stops feeling like a decision. That's why guilt-based budgeting fails. It focuses on emotion, not structure. But when you think structurally, something changes. You don't feel deprived, you feel aware. You stop reacting to money and start designing how it flows. And that's where real control begins. Let's return to the moment we started with. You opening your banking app, seeing numbers that should feel reassuring but don't. That wasn't a failure of discipline, and it wasn't irresponsibility. You were operating inside a system that makes money disappear quietly, without triggering alarms. Once hitting costs become visible, they lose their grip. Not through panic, through understanding. When you see the structure clearly, your decisions change naturally. If this video helped put words to something you've felt but couldn't explain, that's the goal of this channel. Subscribe for more content that challenges how you think about money, calmly, honestly, and without hype. Because clarity, not income, is the real financial advantage.